Previously on World of Warcraft.
Sylvana stepped forward and embraced her sister, and Verissa clung to her like the drowning woman she was. Sylvanas and Verissa made their plans to poison Garrosh, and as they did, they grew closer. Sylvanas felt emotions she hadn't felt in years, and she realized that she'd been very lonely. One day, she even asked Verissa to join her in the Undercity. Together, they could make their own laws and crush any who would stand in their way. Verissa actually accepted Sylvanas' offer, but what she didn't know was that Sylvanas planned on killing her and bringing her back to life. The Forsaken would not be willing to follow the orders from one of the living, and in death, Verissa would see the world as Sylvanas did. They would never have to be lonely again, and at first, Verissa seemed to be more than willing to join Sylvanas in the Undercity, until she remembered her 2 children. She had been so focused on getting revenge that she didn't stop to think that the Undercity would be no place for her 2 growing boys. They would have to be left behind, and it would be the memory of her 2 sons that would ruin all their plans.
Let's kick it off with a nice cinematic. It's going to be a bit different today because I'm going to be using YouTube because there is a very nice 90-minute video by Noble, but at the same time I want you guys to see a few cinematics, so I'm going to be pausing and switching, but don't worry, it's all going to be very well curated, you won't get bored. I think it's best to kick it off with a nice cinematic, and then we go back a little bit in the past to see how we got to that point, just to get everyone where we were last week, because we did explore the story of Sylvanas. We know that Garrosh becomes warchief, and then we know that he's dethroned and deposed as warchief after he does his little, let's just say he does his little 1938 thing, where he hates everyone that isn't an orc. So I think it's best to start with a nice cinematic everyone liked, which is really going to tie in with the Warcraft universe. This is a really good one.
Drink, Hellscream. Claim your destiny. You will all be conquerors. And what, Gul'dan, must we give in return? Everything. Reject this gift. And did you bring these mongrels here just to watch you die? enemies. But we will be conquerors.
So without context, it looks like good CGI, a little bit of combat, and what's going on. For a little bit of context, the big brown guy with the axe was actually Garrosh's dad, who is the original orc warchief that drinks the blood of Manaroth, the giant demon, gets a lot of power, but ends up becoming a slave to the Legion. And that's how the orcs became slaves to the Legion. In an alternate reality, that does not happen. But that is later down the timeline, and now we're going to go into the story of Garrosh. But it gives you a little bit of context as to where Garrosh comes from, where his father was this legendary orc hero, but he was also the first to drink from the blood of Manaroth and essentially doom his people. Which is an interesting thing to have on the back of your mind as a child. So, let's go into the story of Garrosh.
Hello everyone!
To get a better understanding of Garrosh Hellscream, you'll first need to know a little bit about the history of the Horde and about his father.
That's how I started my 2012 version of the story of Garrosh Hellscream. And quite a lot of you requested for an updated version, deep dive into the story. Not only has more story been added, it's also one of the earliest lore videos that I have done. So let us go back in time and talk about one of the best characters built up within World of Warcraft.
You made me what I am.
This takes us back to the time that the orcs were living on the world of Draenor and found themselves mixed up with the Burning Legion, who had corrupted their people and turned them against the Draenei. Dark fell magic, exchanging their ancient traditions of shamanism to become warlocks. Demonic blood offered by Gul'dan and the Pit Lord Manaroth, with Garrosh Hellscream being the first to embrace it. All of it to increase their power, bind them to the Demonic Legion, and wipe out the Draenei. Believing that good things would come to the orcs, believing that their leaders were passing on the wisdom of their ancestors. Instead, they ended up with a dying world. Their skins turned green, reflected the corruption that had seeped into their world and their race. Water and food, it became a rare commodity. That demonic blood that was pumping in their veins, it turned them against each other. It was at the most desperate when the Legion's creator Sargeras manipulated them towards invading a whole different world. A world full of food, water, and plenty of enemies to kill.
Gul'dan, order your warlocks to double their efforts! Moments from now, the gateway will open, and your horde will be released upon this ripe, unsuspecting world.
To weaken it and have the Legion claim it. Azeroth's defenders, however, they managed to push back this horde's first invasion. The second one, it was also repelled, with the Alliance stepping through the Dark Portal to stop the horde from ever again inflicting the same suffering that they had caused to Azeroth. The Dark Portal was destroyed, which separated the horde's forces, leaving some of them, like Grommash and his Warsong clan, now stranded on Azeroth. They believed the way home was lost forever, and that their beloved Draenor and all those left behind, that all of that was dead. Gromspots turned to his son, who had indeed stayed behind. Not because he was too much of a coward to fight, or didn't believe in the mission of the Horde. Quite the opposite, in fact. Garrosh, he had caught a case of the red pox. This wasting disease is highly contagious, lasts for months, and kills many of the infected. Every few generations, an outbreak would wreak havoc among the clans. Those of the orcs infected, they were placed in quarantine in the beautiful land of the Grants under the care of Great Mother Geisha. Although much of the world had been consumed by the Legion's influence, this piece of land, it remained intact, and so did its people. Those here were far enough away from the Fel to keep their normal skin color. They remained uncorrupted, or as the orcs called it, they remained Magar. Father and son, living separately from each other. On Azeroth, Grommash would live on and learn. Team up with young Thrall, liberate orcs from their internment camps, and reform the Horde. Thrall's journey placed him on a path of destiny, one to fight back against another coming of the Legion. Grum was at his side.
but he could sense that things are like the old days, like the demons are near, and the bloodlust, it takes hold of them once more. The warchief of the Horde decides to put Grum and his men on the task of setting up a settlement within Ashenvale forests, entering the territory of the Night Elves, cutting down sacred trees that they've guarded for millennia. It gave Grum the fight that he was looking for, but overcoming something as powerful as the Wild God Cenarius, it was going to take more than just the orc's strength. Once more, they drank the blood of Manaroth, despite it going against everything that Thrall tried to teach them. They embraced the rage and the old days, slayed Cenarius, but also placed themselves right back into the arms of the Legion.
Ah, Thrall. You always believed that the demons corrupted our race, but that's only half true. We gave ourselves up willingly on Draenor. The other chieftains and I, we drank Manaroth's blood, Thrall. We brought this curse upon ourselves. You did this to our people knowingly? Gah!
History repeats itself here, with Grommash fully embracing the demonic curse. Thankfully, Thrall and his new ally, Jaina Proudmoore, they're able to make Hellscream see clearly again, which means that it's time to confront Manaroth himself and make him pay for what he has done to their people.
The boy believed you could be saved, but he didn't know what burns within your soul. Within your heart, you know we are the same. The blood haze has lifted. The demon's fire has burnt out in my veins. I have freed myself. No, old friend. You freed us all.
Grum's heroic.
But just a little bit of catch up if anyone didn't follow completely. He was the first to drink the blood of Manaroth, enslave the entire Orcish people. They converted into a giant raid party to try to take over Azeroth, which is practically Earth. And then after a while, they decided to rebel against the Pit Lord, ended up killing him, and pretty much freed themselves from that enslavement. But he did end up dying as a result.
Sacrifice would mean the salvation for the entire Orcish race. Thrall would go on and help save the world from the Legion, put a base for his new horde in the lands of Durotar, with their capital of Orgrimmar, trying to keep the peace between the Alliance and the Horde going. Some might see this as a fool's errand, the Horde and the Alliance simply destined to fight one another. But people like Thrall, people like Jaina, they did their best to show the world that there was another way, that there was enough room and opportunity for both factions to exist together on Azeroth. Meanwhile, back on Outlands, Garrosh, he grew up with stories of his father, about his savagery and his battle frenzy and his appetite for violence. How he had been the first to give himself to the Horde and to foul magic, allowed himself to be corrupted, growing up believing that his bloodline was cursed, living beneath the shadow of his father's greatest failures. It meant that by the time that we see Garrosh again, which was with the Burning Crusade and the reopening of the Dark Portal, our warchief of the Magar clan, he's quite depressed. But Great Mother Geisha, her time to join the spirits fast approaching. She knows that he has what it takes to lead the Magar. He is strong and wise, all of the spirits approve of him. He just needs to find a way to believe in himself, to let go of the fear that he is going to become like his father. Garrosh is in such a bad state that he even suggests for us to take over leadership, so that he can go ahead and just die, erase the shame of his family name. Nothing that we do seems to be able to snap him out of it. But once we realize that Great Mother Geisha is actually the mother of Durotan, Durotan being Thrall's father, we quickly warn a warchief and make him get his orcish butt over here so that he can talk to his grandmother. She reveals the name that his parents would have given him. As Thrall, it was his slave name. They would have named the Goel, and our Goel is then asked to talk to Garrosh, to reveal what has happened to his father, but Thrall does one better, and he shows the boy how his father died, how he gave his own life, so that all of them could live free of the blood curse. Thrall, he had given Garrosh something that he had never had before, confidence and pride. Pride toward his bloodline, towards who he is. I am Garrosh Hellscream, son of Grum, chieftain of the Magar. And Warchief Thrall saw much potential in our Garrosh. Sure enough, he was brash and quick to anger, but Thrall believed that Garrosh's fierce pride and knowledge of Orcish culture that would serve the Horde well. The Warchief convinced the Magar Orc to act as an advisor back on Azeroth, journey with him through the Dark Portal, where it's soon obvious that Thrall and Garrosh, they have quite different visions when it comes to the Horde. Seeing the massive city of Orgrimmar with his own eyes, it was amazing to Garrosh. Don't forget, he thought that nearly all of the Horde was gone, and here he was, in a city bustling with orcs from all different ages. The color of his skin, being Magar uncorrupted, it made him stand out like a sore thumb. There was an old veteran, one that had served under Grommash himself, who approached Garrosh, told him that he would do his people proud, and if he had still be able to fight, he would follow the young Hellscream, just like he had his father. But not all was fantastic and glorious. At the Valley of Honor, there was a young orc that had spent her childhood in the internment camps who opened his eyes, made him realize that the products that were sold at the markets, it could not have come from the desert land that the Horde called home. Ashenvale to the north, it was full of everything that they could ever need, but they didn't settle there. Their beloved warchief, the one who would do everything for his people, he had chosen to build a city here to pay for the sins of the past. A strange notion to Garrosh. Who was going to be the one to set the price? Are these children that have grown up in the internment camps, are they not punished enough? Thrall's Horde was quite different from the one Garrosh had known, especially since this one, it included more than just the orcs, and Garrosh's vision towards how Thrall was ruling it, it was quite different. Then there was a meeting at Theramore to try and extend that peace that Thrall and Jaina had going to more leaders like Varian Rin, the King of Stormwinds. He had lost much to the savage orcs, like his kingdom, his father, and his freedom, but perhaps times had indeed changed. Perhaps this new warchief Thrall was the beginning of something great. Despite all odds, their negotiations actually went quite well. Small steps towards working together, discussing things like trading timber for ore and exotic hides. All of this was a discussion fit for merchants in Garrosh's eyes. Why should the orcs make concessions when they had the strength to just take what they wanted? To which young Enduin Rin, he asked, why waste your warriors and resource in battle when a few words will bring you greater profit? Point being that Thrall, he was open to the idea of working together, while Garrosh, he was more like his father, a desire and bloodlust for conquest and battle to claim what the Horde needed.
My people should have taken this world long ago during the First War, but they fell to corruption. In their weakness, they allowed the pitiful races of Azeroth to join the Horde.
Regardless, their meeting was disturbed by outside sources, which prevented peace for the Alliance and the Horde. Both sides would soon have to deal with the Lich King waking up in Northrend and undead forces knocking on their door. While Warchief Thrall called for counsel and held his grounds, Garrosh, he wanted to take action, take the fight to Northrend and protect the Hordes. Their argument, it got so heated that Garrosh called for Makura, a duel of honor, a challenge issued out of sheer frustration and rage. At the Ring of Valor, he fought to get his warchief to act, but their fight got interrupted. Quite lucky for Garrosh, though he rather died than admitted that he couldn't take on Thrall in this moment. The Scourge, it did the job for him by attacking Orgrimmar, and with that, the order was given. The Horde and the Alliance, separately, marched upon Northrend to confront the Lich King. None other than Garrosh was tasked with leading the Horde's forces. Hungry to prove himself to his people, we could find him in the Borean tundra at the Warsong Hold, defended a keep against the spider-like Nerubians. Their army was called the Warsong Offensive, with seasoned veterans like Dranosh Saurfang leading the Horde's vanguards, and his father Varrock doing his best to impart some wisdom upon the younger, hot-headed orc. Most of it seems to be lost on him, preferring his own tactics and knowledge. But Garrosh is not a fool, and some of what Varrock tells him actually sticks.
Honor young heroes, no matter how dire the battle. Never forsake it.
They spoke of their past, of what it meant for orcs to be freed of the blood curse, only to now have to deal with their sins, with what they had done. Grommash and Saurfang had both drank from the blood of Manoroth, which led them down a very dark path. Saurfang promised that he wouldn't let Garrosh take them down that road ever again, with the promise from Saurfang to kill him before the day comes. The campaign pushed forward, and Naxxramas was soon enough conquered. But our time in Northrend, it was not just focused on the Lich King and the Scourge. There were distractions like the Nexus War with Malygos the Blue, also great losses at the Wrathgates, Varrock losing his child, while up north in Ulduar, the Explorers League uncovered a horrible, ancient evil.
Yogg Saron has awakened.
I want to see this dwarf.
Garrosh,
To see the fear in his eyes. Then we'll know if he's telling the truth.
No, wait!
We are going to need all the help we can get if we are...
Thrall!
What? What are they doing here?
Let me explain.
I thought I smelled the stench of Alliance pigs.
control yourself.
You want my blood? Come then, dog. He's mine.
Stop it!
We have all lost! A great deal in this conflict. But we stand to lose everything if we do not stop fighting and work together!
A true warchief would never partner with cowards.
At the Wrathgate, the Horde's partnership killed more of our men than the Scourge. I'm done with your Horde. May this Death God take you all.
A very interesting thing, you guys remember the Wrathgate, that is when Sylvanas' troops threw the poison on everyone, and everyone died during the Wrath of the Lich King. But a very interesting thing about the city of Dalaran during this expansion, it was a neutral city for both factions. However, the factions were separated. Half the city was for the Horde, half of the city was for the Alliance. So you can imagine how that worked. They did not get along. But they couldn't attack each other in the city, but they were still completely separated. And if one faction tried to get into the other's territory, they would just get teleported out. Like, no, you're not allowed in that part of the city.
You disappoint me, Garrosh.
With their leaders not seeing eye to eye, heroes amongst the factions would rise up themselves to push back the evil of Yogg Saron. What is interesting to note is that at this time in the story, Garrosh and Varian, they're very similar characters. The human king, he has two sides to him, one of them being his Lokash side, quick to anger, quick to lash out, a deep hatred for the Hordes and all that they had done. He was unable to look further, to let go and work towards a better future like Thrall had wanted. Garrosh was similar. He had no love for the Alliance, only to his hordes. Well, this was the second time that he and Varian had come to blows. It would definitely not be the last. And the words spoken by his warchief.
You disappoint me, Garrosh.
They would haunt his steps as Thrall stuck around and inspected Warsong holds. While doing so, a report came in. The Alliance had apparently attempted to conquer Mortrefar, but a Horde patrol had seen the regiment and successfully prevented the assault by attacking them from the rear. Pinched between the Scourge at their front and the Horde at their back, the Alliance forces had perished, but so had the Hordes. The Scourge too had suffered losses, but the gates remained under the Lich King's control. Forces led by Blackscar, who proudly reported back to Garrosh. Though it had cost them their lives, their selfless bravery prevented the Alliance from capturing a strategic point. Such courage is worthy of true soldiers of the Hordes. Garrosh sent a messenger back, telling Blackscar to immediately return to Warsong Hold. An ambush on open troops waiting to fight. That's one thing. To attack a regiment already engaged in battle with another from behind. What was Blackscar going to do next? sneak into their camps and poison their water, enslave one of their commanders with magic, and force him to murder his troops while they sleep, rain disease upon their enemies like the Forsaken, fight the way that they do, there is no combat, but honorable combat. What Blackscar had done was coward work, and Garrosh would not have cowards among his ranks. One last chance was given to Blackscar to return to Orgrimmar's hammer, lead his soldiers in a manner worthy of the hordes, prove that he was no coward, or it would be his head on a pike. A wise decision, one that Thrall approved of. He had no regrets to make Garrosh the commander of their forces. He only wished for his attitude towards the Alliance to change.
So that's a very interesting thing about Garrosh. Even though he absolutely hates everyone that isn't an orc, he only wants to engage them in battle honorably. If you've played or watched Ghost of Tsushima, that's very similar to Jin's uncle. He's upset that one of his officers effectively killed a regiment of Alliance while they were engaged in battle with the undead. So he's like, no, you don't kill them while they're in battle. You kill them when they're not in battle because that's honorable. You're dishonorable. It's sort of very interesting and gives his character a lot of depth. He's not single-dimensional in that he simply just wants to kill everyone. He's got a very particular way of doing things.
But Hellscream had a duty to the Hordes, and the Horde alone would not compromise like Thrall had. His people would never dwindle. Not again. The Hordes would never fall. After the tournament held by Tyrion Fordring to figure out who was ready to assault Icecrown, the Alliance and the Hordes, they finished their campaign in Northrend by slaying Arthas the Lich King and replacing him with Bolvar. The armies of the Alliance and Horde returned home as conquering victors. They had triumphed over one of the greatest threats Azeroth had ever known. Back in Orgrimmar, their people greeted Garrosh with a thunderous applause, with a parade of his own idea to honor all the veterans of the Northrend campaign. He was now seen as a worthy heir of the Hellscream lineage, and as a remarkable battle commander in his own right. The rumors of him single-handedly taking out the Lich King, they might have been a bit much, but it was undeniable that his leadership had brought them success. That Garrosh was exactly what the Horde had needed in their dark hour. In the shadow of the armor and skull of their great enemy Manoroth, Thrall presented young Hellscream with the weapon of his father, Gorhal, the axe that had slain the Pit Lords, but was also used to slay Cenarius. Like any weapon, it can be used for good or ill. I charge you with being the best of your father, Garrosh, with using this weapon wisely and well for the good of your people. If only Thrall could predict the future, but his attention would soon be drawn to the coming of the Cataclysm. Shamans around the world sensed that something was coming, that something was very wrong with the elements themselves, but what was causing this upheaval remained a mystery.
This is a very nice cinematic to watch. This was another expansion in which Deathwing returns. So I'm going to play the whole thing because I think it's worth watching. It's a very nice one. So for a little bit of context, this is right after Wrath of the Lich King. You have Cataclysm. That is Deathwing, the Earth Warden, who was corrupted by an old god. As you can see, very evil. And he leaves his chamber, which is in the middle of the earth where the molten core is and all that good stuff, flies out. As a result, he pretty much destroys the entire landscape of the world. And we've got bots, as always. And in doing so, everyone has to focus their attention on getting rid of him. Thrall being one of the most powerful shamans, he goes off on his little pilgrimage to try to understand what is going on from the elements. Because obviously the whole world is going to absolute shit. The water elements, the air elements, the fire elements, the earth elements. He's trying to figure out what he can do to help heal the land. Because as soon as everything starts going down, all the elements start going in a frenzy, which only make things worse. So he puts down his mantle of warchief and actually gives it to Garrosh for the time being. So that is how Garrosh becomes warchief of the Horde. And that is where the story continues on. And I'm just going to ban the bots while you guys continue watching. We can skip this little part because we've just seen the whole one, but it's a very nice one and worth watching.
I win.
Figure out what was going on. The warchief decided to travel to Outland and communicate with their elements. While he was gone, someone would have to lead the Horde, and Thrall decided that Garrosh was the perfect orc for the job, to lead the Horde on his behalf until he returns. At first, Garrosh thought that politics were not exactly his game. He understood battle and tactics and how to rally troops. But ruling their people, he'd rather have a sword in his fist than a scroll. Thrall assured him that he wouldn't enter the political battlefield without weapons. At his side would be seasoned advisors like Eitric and Cairne to help him uphold the honor of the Hordes. No need for glory at the moment. You just need to take care of it. Put his needs before your own, as your father did. It is my true longing to lead the Horde to the best of my ability, Garrosh said. And so yes, 1,000 times yes, my warchief. I will lead as well as I can, and I will consult with the advisors you suggest. I know what a tremendous honor you do me, and I will strive to be worthy of it. Ancestors, Thrall thought as he watched Garrosh stride away. Chest swelled with pride and pleasure. I pray that I'm doing the right thing. This right here is a critical moment for the story of Garrosh and the Horde as a whole. As news spreads about Thrall's choice, people like Cairne could not believe their ears. Surely Thrall wasn't about to hand over leadership to this arrogant blusterer to guide them in this time. There were definitely good elements to Garrosh. Cairne could see it, and with time, those seeds would perhaps take root in Garrosh's soul. But right now, he was not fit to lead the Horde, any more than Grom had been. But Thrall had made up his mind, left the Horde behind, and Cairne, he did his best to advise Garrosh. So did others, but often the Horde leadership clashed with each other, clashed with their new warchief. While Thrall had hoped that his new responsibility, that was actually tempering Garrosh and grant him wisdom. Instead, taking on the mantle of leadership, it only encouraged Garrosh to indulge in his warlike ways. He had always believed that the Horde was being too timid. Thrall's way of paying for past crimes, trying to work with the Alliance, all of that was not what he had in mind. His gaze turned northwest to the lush forest of Ashenvale. It was a land of plenty, and it was well within the Horde's reach. Most of the region belonged to the Night Elves. But they did not stop Garrosh from sending troops into the woodlands. Their assaults in turn enraged the Alliance. Tensions between the factions flared up, and open war seemed inevitable. Some of the Horde members welcomed these bold and aggressive maneuvers. But Cairne did not. The elder Tauren did everything he could to reason with the acting warchief and prevent bloodshed. In Cairne's eyes, Garrosh was leading the Horde down a dangerous path, one that would inevitably destroy it. The warchief did not listen to his wisdom, and so Cairne spoke the only language the orc would understand. He challenged Garrosh to Makora.
Garrosh, you are not fit to rule the Horde.
Quite a lot of you, rightfully so, commented that the hostility in Ashenvale, the attack that pushed Cairne into action, that was actually carried out by the Twilight's Hammer cult, masquerading as members of the Horde in order to stir up tension, meaning that Cairne was actually falsely accusing Garrosh when challenging to this battle. Now, this is true when we go by the story told in The Shattering, a novel released in 2010. The story back then was indeed a peaceful meeting between Tauren and Night Elf druids. This was then disturbed by the Twilight Hammer that made it look like Garrosh instigated the attack. News of this reached Cairne Bloodhoof and the duel followed. However, Chronicles Volume 3, released in 2018, it makes no mention of this. Rather, it goes to the explanation that I gave you in Part 2. Garrosh setting his eyes on Ashenvale, those lands of plenty, tensions flaring up between the factions, and Cairne doing everything that he could to reason with the warchief, until he spoke the only language the orc would understand, challenging Garrosh to Mak'gora. Before a crowd of onlookers, the Tauren and the orc fought for the future of the Horde itself.
Just so you know, the Twilight Hammer is basically the servants of Deathwing, so they're their antagonists in this expansion.
On one side stood the promise of a peaceful future, on the other, the promise of blood and conquest. It was blood and conquest that won that day, but not because Garrosh was the better fighter. Despite their age difference, Cairne's knowledge and expertise outplayed Garrosh at every turn, playing into his bloodlust, his hot-headedness. The old bull stood his ground and might have won that day, was it not for Magatha Grim Totem. Part of the ritual for this Mak'gora was to have a shaman bless their weapons. Seeing how Magatha had always wanted to take Thunderbluff away from Cairne, she saw this as the perfect opportunity and coated Gorhal, without Garrosh's knowledge, coated the blade with poison. One strike, a mere flesh wound. That was all it took. Cairne blinked. His vision was blurring. Had he gotten dust, or sweat, or blood in his eyes? He took a precious second to wipe the back of his hand across his eyes. But it aided nothing. His hand shook as he lowered it, and his legs, they felt weak. Stunned, he stared at Garrosh. The orc was sweating profusely and breathing hard. As Cairne watched, Garrosh gripped the axe and met Cairne's gaze. Cairne clutched his own weapon. It weaved in his hands. It felt so strangely heavy. And then he knew exactly what had happened to him. And so I, who have lived my whole life with honor, die betrayed. Having Garrosh do her dirty work, it allowed Magatha to seize Thunderbluff and seize control. But her victory was not absolute, and it didn't last for very long. Cairne's son, Bane Bloodhoof, he found aid in Theramore, financial support from Jaina Proudmoore to retake a city. Magatha's betrayal, her use of Garrosh, it was whispered and rumored, and the warchief wasn't exactly happy. So it was that when she asked for his aid, it was denied with a letter, which said, "Unto Elder Crone Magatha of the Grim Totem, acting warchief of the Horde, Garrosh Hellscream, sends his most sincere wishes for a slow and painful death. It has come to my attention that you have deprived me of a rightful kill. Cairne Bloodhoof was a hero of the Horde, and an honorable member of a usually honorable race. It is with disgust and anger that I discover you have caused me to bring about his death through accidental treachery. Such tactics may work well for your renegade, honorless tribe and alliance scum, but I despise them. It was my wish to fight Cairne fairly and win or lose by my own skill or lack of it. Now, I shall never know, and the cry of traitor will dog my steps until such a time as I can sport your head on a pike and point to you as the real traitor. So, no, I will not be sending any true-hearted orcs to fight alongside your treacherous, belly-crawling tribe. Your victory or your defeat is in the hands of your Earth Mother now. Either way, I look forward to hearing of your demise."
Garrosh in a nutshell. He would rather lose honorably than win dishonorably.
You're on your own, Magatha, as friendless and disliked as you have ever been. Perhaps more. Enjoy your loneliness. And with that, Garrosh washed his hands of her foul treachery, and Bane took back the city. Following his father's wisdom, he decided not to execute her. Exile would be Magatha's fate, and for those that remained at her side. This, the young Tauren believed, was the best way to honor his father's wishes, to put the needs of their people before his own desire for vengeance. This mindset, it also helped him to get past the Mak'gora between Garrosh and Cairne. He held no massive love for Hellscream, But for the sake of his people and for the sake of the hordes, he gripped his warchief's hands and pledged the Tauren's loyalty once more.
Garrosh! Cairne was my brother!
Thrall's decision to make Garrosh the acting warchief, it had cost him the life of one of his closest friends and allies. He'd been wrong to put his faith in Garrosh, and he blamed himself for all that had come to pass. But Argoel had learned much about what was to come, was now on a journey of saving the entire world, so he couldn't exactly come back as warchief, and Garrosh was left in charge. Under his leadership, the Horde's aggression accelerated, which actually made a whole bunch of people happy. It was a change from Thrall's leadership, without a doubt, but his new warchief quickly became a fan favorite. His war campaign, it took the Horde into Ashenvale, these lands of plenty, where Garrosh's brutal tactics, like deploying the Magnetar taken from Northrend, forced to fight for them because they held the children hostage. It almost secured their victory. Just a bit unlucky that around this time, Varian Rin was dealing with his inner turmoil, where before, he and Garrosh were quite similar. Now he was actively working on reining in that aggression that he had inside. Gang Greymane and the Gilnean Worgen, they wanted to rejoin the Alliance. They guided the King of Stormwind through his own ritual, which ended with Varian becoming the champion of the Wild God Goldrin, leading the Worgen forces to aid the Night Elves in Ashenvale. Once more, Varian and Garrosh clash blades, the king disarming and wounding the warchief. Having a demigod on your side, it helps quite a bit, and the Horde was forced to retreat, literally pulling Garrosh off the battlefield. No matter. One battle lost, it did not mean the end of the war. Garrosh pushed forward with their campaign, assaulting more territories, while also dealing with his fellow leaders and commanders amongst the hordes. The new warchief, he had vision and ambitions for his faction, all the while remembering the lessons of the past. There's no combat, but honorable combat. So when the news reached him that Overlord Kromgar had ended their campaign in the Stoneteller Mountains by bombing Taldera Grove, the warchief decided to pay them a little visit.
Look upon the world, Cliffwalker, and see the might of the Horde!
What have you done, Kromgar?
Warchief! I was carrying out your command!
My command? Was my command to murder innocents, Kromgar?
Warchief! Sir,
Am I a murderer, Kromgar?
No! Warchief!
Then I ask you again, what have you done? I sent you into Stone Talon Mountains with an army. Your orders were to secure this land for the Horde. Instead, you laid waste to the land, murdered innocents, children even. I spent a very long time in Northrend, Kromgar. I learned much about the Horde in that time. While there, a wise old war hero told me something that I would carry with me forever. Honor, Kromgar. No matter how dire the battle, never forsake it. Overlord Kromgar, you have disgraced the Horde. You have brought shame to us as a people. By my right as war chief, I hereby relieve you of duty. You are dismissed. And you...
Wait, Warchief, please. This is the hero responsible for uncovering this corruption. This one tried to stop Kromgar. Have mercy, Warchief.
Mercy? Your wife and child were murdered. Your kin wiped out. Your home burn to the ground. Mercy. Chieftain, on this day, I learn from you.
One of the moments that made people cheer for Garrosh. There's another in the Twilight Highlands that we'll get to in just a moment. Before that, upholding honor amongst the hordes. It proved difficult with the other races, like the Forsaken and Sylvanas Windrunner, who had taken over the battle at Gilneas. Honor meant very little to Sylvanas. She is more about getting results. Despite a warchief banning the use of their plague, she used it anyways, and when she showed off the new powers granted to her by the Valkyr, Garrosh wasn't impressed.
Why have you called for me? And more importantly, what are those scourge fiends doing here?
Warchief, so glad you could make it. With the death of the Lich King, many of the more intelligent scourge became unemployed. Those fiends, as you so delicately put it, are called Valkyr. They are under my command now. And they are part of the reason that I asked to see you.
Get on with it, Sylvanas!
Very well, Warchief. I have solved the plight of the Forsaken. As a race, we Forsaken are unable to procreate. With the aid of the Valkyr, we are now able to take the corpses of the fallen and create new Forsaken. Agatha, show the Warchief!
What you have done here, Sylvanas, it goes against the laws of nature. Disgusting is the only word I have to describe it.
Warchief, without these new Forsaken, my people would die out. Our hold upon Gilneas and Northern Lordaeron would crumble.
Have you given any thought to what this means, Sylvanas? What difference is there between you and the Lich King now?
Isn't it obvious, Warchief? I serve the Horde.
Watch your clever mouth, bitch! Grommash, you stay behind and make sure the Banshee Queen is well guarded.
In Orgrimmar, Garrosh had decided to evict the majority of the non-orc races from the center, believing only the orcs possessed the strength to truly defend their city. The advisors left behind by Thrall, they were more and more realizing that they were talking to a wall. The discussion between Volten and Garrosh, it pushed the Darkspear out of the city and nearly out of the hordes.
Don't talk back to me, troll. You know who was left in charge here. Haven't you stopped to ask yourself why Thrall chose me instead of you?
There be no question why, Garrosh. He gave you the title because you be Grom's son. And because the people be wanting a war hero. I think you be more like your father than you thought. Even without the demon blood.
You are lucky that I don't gut you right here, whelp. You are foolish to think you can speak to your warchief in such ways.
You'll be no warchief of mine. You not earn my respect, and I'll not be seeing the Horde destroyed by your foolish thirst for war.
And what exactly do you think you're going to do about it? Your threats are hollow. Go slink away with the rest of your kind to the slums. I will endure your filth in my throne room no longer!
I know exactly what I'll be doing about it, son Hellscream. I'll watch and wait as your people slowly become aware of your ineptitude. I'll laugh as they grow to despise you, as I do. And when that time comes, that your failure is complete and your power is meaningless, I will be there to end your rule, swiftly and silently. You will spend your reign glancing over your shoulder and fearing the shadows. For when the time comes, and your blood be slowly draining out, you will know exactly who fired the arrow that pierced your black heart.
You have sealed your fate, troll.
And you yours, warchief.
Some left, while others joined, like the goblins with their leader Galliwix, or their Shadowspear trolls recruited to aid with their campaign in Darkshore. The Cataclysm carried on with not just the Alliance and the Horde fighting each other. There was also the bigger threats of Deathwing and the Old Gods' plans with the world, which required some attention as well. Both sides ventured into the Twilight Highlands to take care of the Twilight Hammer cult. Fleets of airships blotted out the sun, laden with war machines and soldiers. But our entry into the Highlands, it wasn't just smooth sailing.
Fellow warriors of the Horde, hear me now! Ahead hides our foe, worshippers of chaos who seek to remake the world. A new world is coming, friends, but it is not the world of their design. Together, we will crush the Twilight's hammer, raise their stronghold, salt the earth, and burn the bodies! All will tremble at our might! Then we will stand astride this world as its masters! United in our conviction, unrivaled in strength, beholden to no one! Today, we will remake the world! Our world!
Coming up on the
For
Twilight Highlands, Captain!
Horde!
Captain, sir! Alliance naval fleet sighted off the port bow!
The Alliance steams in close formation without escort! Air Guard, attack! Strafe them now while they cannot maneuver!
He's doing? The carriers are unprotected! What kind of madman orders away his close air support?
A winner! They're after the warchief! Get off my ship! The warchief Zeppelin is in flames! It's going down!
Despite a rocky start, we do make landfall and come in contact with the Dragonmaw clan. They were actually part of the very first Horde. Quite a long story involving the enslavement of Alexstrasza, the Red Dragon aspect, and their flight. These days, the Dragonmaws are led by the fell orc Morgor, but a bit of persuasion on our part, a bit of murder to get rid of this corrupted orc, he replaces him with Zayla.
Wherever the Horde takes us, we will keep our heads high and our blood pure. God riddance, Morgor! A new Dragonmaw dawns this day!
The warchief! He's alive! He was rescued off the coast. Come outside quickly! The town is ours! Ah, there she is! The battle maiden of the Dragonmaw! Let me see your face.
Hellscream, I am Zayla of the Dragonmaw. Your people have freed mine from tyranny. We are your instrument. The strength of the Dragonmaw is yours to command! For the Horde!
Blood and honor, hero. The Horde welcomes you. Your people will be put to the test as we obliterate Twilight's hammer and lay claim to this distant shore.
And so they did. Their adventures together, forming a close bond between Garrosh and Zayla. If they ever wanted to add a secret child of Garrosh to the story, Zayla would be our best bet. That's never been stated though. In this moment, the Twilight's hammer in the area, they were defeated. And eventually Goel and the Aspects and the world of Azeroth, they were able to stop Deathwing and the Old Gods' plans.
You are Azeroth's true guardians, and the future of this world is in your hands. For the dawning of the Age of Mortals has begun.
The damage inflicted to the world, it meant that Goel stayed with the Earthen Ring to heal Azeroth. That also meant that Garrosh stayed on as warchief of the Horde, and this dawn of the Age of Mortals. It was his time to push forward with their plans of dominance and conquest. The Horde leaders were gathered, as Garrosh explained his plans of taking out Theramore, home to Jaina Proudmoore. The one that Thrall had worked so hard with to establish peace, it had now become a prime target for the warchief to take out. Not all of them agreed with Garrosh's choice. Not all thought that this was a good idea for the Horde. But all the same, the Horde, they rallied its forces at the warchief's command. Now going after Jaina, it was quite a dilemma for Bane. She had helped him to reclaim his city after all. She had been there for him when he had no idea who he could trust. But at the same time, he wasn't going to abandon his duty to the Hordes.
Regarding Theramore, if you take a look at Azeroth, on the right-hand side, or the east, you have the Eastern Kingdoms, on top of which you've got the Night Elf City, and below you've got Undercity, which is Sylvanas' main camp, and then further south, the rest of the continent is basically the Human Capital City, the Dwarf Capital City, and the Gnome Capital City. On the left-hand side, you've got Kalimdor, which is where the majority of the Horde is. All the way on the north, you have the World Tree, which is called Teldrassil, which is the Night Elf capital. Further south, you have Ashenvale, which are the woods. You go more south, you have Orgrimmar, which is the main stronghold and city of the Horde, where you've got Garrosh. When you go a bit further south, on the left-hand side, you've got yourself Thunderbluff, which is where the Tauren are. And more to the right, close to the sea, you've got Theramore. So, in a nutshell, Theramore is surrounded by Horde territory with very little support. She's basically flanked on all sides, and it's not so much a city that can hold its own position, but it's more of a symbolic place because there's been peace treaties ever since Thrall was in the Horde, and also Bane was sort of there during all of that, and there hasn't been any hostility because there was peace. And now you've got Garrosh, which is basically saying, let's ransack the city. The city's not so much a strategic footprint on Kalimdor. I mean, it is if you want to land a fleet, but you don't necessarily need it. It's more symbolic. On top of that, it's Jaina's home city. Kind of a dick move, and it would piss her off.
The Tauren would march with them. As a middle ground, he decided that at the very least, Jaina shouldn't be caught unaware. In secret, a messenger was sent to warn her of the coming attack, which gave Theramore the chance to evacuate its civilians and call in aid from the Alliance. Unbeknownst to Bane was that this played right into Garrosh's hands. Despite their bitching and moaning about making the troops hold back and wait, not immediately charging toward Theramore, the warchief had a plan. He had waited for as many of the Alliance forces to be gathered in one place so he could unleash his true weapon. Theramore was not going to be conquered with brute force. It would be completely annihilated with the focusing iris. Stolen earlier from the Blue Dragonflight, turned into a bomb courtesy of the Blood Elves, dropped over the city by the goblins. Only Ronin's brave sacrifice had saved Jaina's life and prevented the blast from doing so much more damage. Bane was a warrior. His eyes had seen almost more than he could bear of the horrors of war. But this, the mana bomb so thoughtfully provided by the Blood Elves, who stood cheering with other Horde members who somehow felt that what Garrosh had wrought was a good thing, had exploded over the entire city and had not just harmed its citizens and buildings, but crushed them utterly. Tears ran down his muzzle, and he made no effort to wipe them away. He stood surrounded by throngs of cheering Hordes. But as he looked around, he saw, illuminated by the ghostly arcane glow, faces the war's own expression of shock and revulsion. What had happened to the warchief who had once said,
"Honor, Cromgar. No matter how dire the battle, never forsake it."
Here we would see a massive shift in Garrosh's character. The whole conquer and conquest, that was nothing new. I don't think there are many out there that have issue with Theramore being a target to take out. Rather, it's the methods used by the warchief that made people wonder what the hell was going on. Or one expansion earlier, he had thrown Overlord Cromgar off a cliff for using a bomb in the Stoneteller Mountains. Here he was deploying the same tactics, and the bomb was just part of it. There was also dark shamanism, forcing the elements to obey them right after the Cataclysm. There were Kraken summoned from the depths. No longer did honor dictate his choices, and it was such a difference that back then some actually wondered if there was more going on. Was perhaps the Garrosh that we had known replaced in the Twilight Highlands when he fell off the ship? Was his new ally the extremely loyal and enforcing Blackrock Orc Melkorok? Was that Kil'jaeden in disguise, mirroring the manipulation of the orcs of old? None of that would come into play. Blizzard has clearly said that it was Garrosh who made these decisions. No old god influence or legion manipulation. The conflicts with the advisors left behind, and slowly filling up his inner circle with those in line with his vision for the future. All of that became the path that they laid out for Hellscream, with the bombing of Theramore just being the beginning. The victory earned at Theramore was cause for celebration in Orgrimmar, while whispers started to rise up within the faction. People like Bane and Vol'jin and others, they did not agree with what the warchief had done. Speaking out or taking action at this point in time was not really an option. People merely visiting an inn and whispering their discontent. They found themselves under assault and scrutiny by Melkorok and his forces. Hellscream's eyes are always upon them, so they laid low and remained loyal to the Hordes, while Jaina's survival, that meant that she was able to return to Theramore and witness the carnage. She looked for survivors, but she found none. The peacekeeper, the diplomat that she used to be, that was murdered by Hellscream. Now there was rage that took hold of her heart, and while there were no survivors to be found, she did encounter a group of orcs poking around the debris, laughing to each other, looting of the dead.
No one can protect you. Kill the Proudmoore wench, and bring me that
Your
bomb!
people are despicable cowards, Orc. You're nothing more than rabid dogs, and you will be put down!
Brave words, mage. I'll spit in your face when you beg for mercy.
You spit on mercy? Then you will have none. You want carnage? Garrosh will get more blood than he ever bargained for!
Now the focusing iris was in her possession, and she planned to use its power to create a massive tidal wave and drown out all those in Orgrimmar. Goel and the Blue Dragon Caligos, they were able to change her mind, convince her to not become another Arthas. Instead, she decided to use the Waters Gathered to help the assembled Alliance fleets. They were fighting against Kraken, who were dealing massive damage to the ships. But the warchief did not just send the creatures of the deep to do his fighting. He too, Gorehal in hand, jumped into the fray, once more clashing blades with Varian. 3 times they had done this dance now. Garrosh wanted to end it, but their battle was interrupted by a Kraken, and Jaina's tidal wave secured victory here for the Alliance. But Warchief Garrosh was far from done though. In his mind, he was simply thinking too small. It was no longer just about taking over Kalimdor. They had to crush the Alliance utterly, wiping their filth off the face of Azeroth. More ships, more weapons, more elementals and beasts and demons obeying their commands. Garrosh Hellscream, said Bane calmly. I ride now for Mulgore with my braves. There are far fewer of them than when I rode out to answer the call of the warchief of the Hordes. My loyalty to the Horde is deep, and you cannot gainsay me on that. But know this, I fight for the true Horde, not one that utilizes methods both unnecessary and shameful. There must never be another Theramore, not if you wish the aid of Bane Bloodhoof. Garrosh stared at Bane with narrowed eyes and a slight smirk that Bane could not interpret. Duly noted, he said, as he gathered up the reins of his Kodo. Bane glanced at Vol'jin. The troll looked at him sadly and gave a nearly imperceptible shake of his head. Bane nodded slightly. He understood Vol'jin's reasoning. It was the same as Bane's own. Vol'jin needed to protect his people from the wrath of an offended Garrosh. A world war. As Bane headed west, toward home and the serenity of the rolling plains of his beloved Mulgore, he could not decide if Garrosh was mad with power or simply mad. After the Cataclysm and the bombing of Theramore, a new land was discovered.
I think we have to watch the entire Mists of Pandaria intro because it's just too good to miss. But at this point, we could see Garrosh's frame of mind shift from it's better to die honorably than win dishonorably to bomb all of the things. But something that the other Horde leaders in the Alliance at the time did not know was that Garrosh had also enslaved members of the Red Dragonfly, which were the Red Dragons, and the Dragonmaw began harvesting their eggs and enslaving the young dragon whelps which were born from the day they're born into becoming rideable mounts for their riders. So basically he went from don't kill women, don't kill children, don't attack soldiers that are already engaged in combat to let's enslave dragons, force them to lay eggs, enslave their children, make more dragons, and our troops can fly. This is where the whole war crime section of the story begins, and pretty much if you have a list at this point, he's basically become Adolf Hitler. He's pretty much kicked out every non-orc, or begun to kick out every non-orc out of Orgrimmar. You've got Bane, who is the leader of the Tauren, basically leaving and going for Thunderbluff, his capital city, because he's worried for his people. Vulcan, leader of the Darkspear Trolls, is basically leaving the capital city too, scared for his people. Sylvanas, well, let's face it, he never liked the undead to begin with. Sylvanas never believed in him. So you could see very quickly that the Horde is splintering, and Garrosh keeps talking about the true Horde, his Horde, the pure Horde. So we've very much got that tone of purity. And what he means by purity is the orcs. The orcs are pure, the non-corrupted, the orcs. The original orcs, the original Horde, without anyone else. So basically, he doesn't even care that the other races are leaving because he considers them weak. He questions their loyalty. He doesn't like them. So he's definitely changed, and his outlook shows that. He's pretty much becoming a criminal is an understatement, but he's pretty much a warlord, a dictator. He's practically Hitler. That's the closest example that I could give in real life that makes sense. But let's watch the full Mists of Pandaria trailer because it's just so good. And at this point, this is the next expansion with introduces Mists of Pandaria. If you guys are fans of Kung Fu Panda, that's basically what it is. So I'm going to play it for you guys.
To ask why we fight is to ask why the leaves fall. It is in their nature. Perhaps there is a better question. Why do we fight? To protect home and family. To preserve balance and bring harmony. For my kind, the true question is, What is worth fighting for?
So they introduced the Mists of Pandaria. After the Cataclysm, the mist that was hiding this island finally disappeared, which means the Horde and the Alliance were able to discover this land for the very first time. They did, and as you can imagine, both of them went there very quickly to try to set up alliances with the local population, being the Pandaren. Ha 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 ha. Garrosh. Ha ha ha. He didn't like any non-orcs in his horde. How do you think he feels about fluffy pandas? In a land that basically looks like China in Kung Fu Panda. Just to bring it back to the question that was in the chat, was Garrosh ever pure-blooded to begin with? He was. His father drank the blood of Manaroth, but this was after Garrosh was born. And Garrosh, never having joined the invasion, he never drank the blood of Manaroth, so he is completely uncorrupted. And yes, Mists of Pandaria, it is just one of those cinematics. Blizzard and cinematics are just they got a down pat. Blizzard makes some of the best cinematics in the industry.
I am pleased to report that the battle at sea goes well, Warchief. Our forces report decisive victories off the coasts of Daenerys and Tol Barad.
Alliance blood spills. This pleases me, General.
There's more. I received word that our southern fleet engaged an Alliance envoy. We chased the royal flagship until it ran aground.
Aground? Where?
Apparently, they found a massive, uncharted landmass, shrouded by dense mists.
And you let the Alliance get there first! Redirect the invasion fleet! General, you and your best veterans will pave our way. Storm the shore, and paint this new continent red!
That pretty much sums up Garrosh's reaction to discovering new land. Oh yeah, he bad.
And so, the eyes of Hellscream fell upon Pandaria, a land previously covered by mists, one waited to be conquered in the name of the Hordes. People, resource and power. That is what the warchief desired. Unknown to both sides was that Pandaria is actually infected with something called the Sha. It feeds on negative emotions, and bringing our faction war here, it was like offering them a banquet. Problems all across the land arose. Problems that adventurers had to solve. Mix and mingle with the local Pandaren, until the warchief himself, around 2 months later, he joined them and pushed on.
Vol'jin, what are you doing here? Shouldn't you be on your island kissing frogs?
The question is, what are we doing here? You bring this war to another corner of Azeroth, and I wanna know why.
Your lack of vision is why your people are still primitives, and your lack of loyalty is why I did not summon the Darkspear for this campaign. Look around you, Vol'jin. This land is rich in resources. Wood, stone, iron, fuel, and people. A show of might on these shores will make the Pandaren think twice about joining the Alliance.
All this bloodshed make everyone think twice about joining the Horde.
This is the difference between me and you, Vol'jin. I won't let my people starve to death in the desert. I will stop at nothing. Nothing to ensure a proud and glorious future for the Orcs and anyone with the courage to stand with us. Wait here.
Garrosh whispers to Bloodraiser. I have no doubts that you will be able to confirm my suspicion. See how the troll reacts.
A cool feature of this expansion was that if you did play a Pandaren, you could join either the Horde or the Alliance. You would start off your journey on a giant world turtle, actually. And once you hit a certain level, you can explore outside the world turtle, and then you inevitably either join the Horde or the Alliance. Now, there is one player out there that has never left the world turtle, and he decided to level by gathering herbs. He has reached max level by just doing laps and laps of the island and gathering herbs. Now, this would probably take dozens and dozens of hours, probably hundreds of hours to achieve, but he has done it because he is a crazy bastard. But yes, the Pandaren would either join the Horde or the Alliance. The Alliance would try to establish bases and carry emissaries and make friends with the Pandaren, whereas the Horde would just try to conquer land, hold it, and show might in order to recruit or enslave people. Garrosh wasn't against enslaving people at this point, so he kind of became even worse. Yeah, he has slaves now. He's practically the British Empire at this point.
He approves he may live. If he does not, he's a traitor. Cut his throats. And that's exactly what happened on the mission. Inside the Dark Rookery, they uncover wicked dark Mogu magics to shape flesh, to build warriors. And Vol'jin has had enough. He can't go through with this.
Garrosh playing God, making monsters. This ain't what the Horde is about.
He knew you were a traitor! The Warchief will annihilate his enemies!
The troll nearly lost his life here, but were able to fight a way out. He decides to lay low for a while, discover what it means to be a horde, to be a family, and eventually return for the Darkspear Rebellion. Before that moment, we saw the Warchief abuse the Blood Elves in the search of the Divine Bell. This ancient Mogu artifact, it allowed them to empower their warriors and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. A weapon that Garrosh very much desired. One that the Alliance was keen to keep out of his hands. And at first, it seems like they're successful, able to track it down before the Horde got their hands on it. With the aid of Jaina, now leader of the Cairne, they managed to hide the bell away, only for the Sun Reavers to be used by the Warchief and steal the mighty artifacts. Jaina finds out about this, and all hell breaks loose in Dalaran. The Purge of Dalaran they call it, but Garrosh didn't care. He got his prize, and as a bonus, the Blood Elves, who'd been thinking about leaving the Horde and rejoin the Alliance, they were now forced ever closer to Hellscream's Horde.
We Sindori will take our future into our own hands. And get this damn thing out of my sight. Hellscream bought his treasure with the blood of my people. I hope it destroys him.
So what they mean by the Purge of Dalaran is that Jaina went on a killing spree and pretty much kicked out any Horde out of Dalaran. Now, the Blood Elves were in a very interesting situation where they joined the Horde thanks to Sylvanas, a former High Elf from who the Blood Elves originated from. But Jaina basically wanted the Blood Elves, didn't want anything to do with the Blood Elves. So the Blood Elves, who were basically sitting on the fence, didn't know where to go, and considering joining the Alliance, were basically pushed away from the Alliance. And as a result of being pushed away, they had to, get closer to Garrosh, who didn't like them to begin with. So, sucks to be them.
My lord, you would make a fine warchief.
It may come to that. Bring me my blades. The next move is mine.
Horde heroes are invited to witness the ringing of the bell, Garrosh experimenting with its powers. But it does seem to be a bit too much for our warriors to handle. On top of that, Anduin Rin, he's been busy recovering the Harmonic Mallets, an artifact of Pandaren design to turn the chaos of the bell into perfect harmony.
Die, whelp!
To give it a little bit of context, that is Anduin. He is the prince of the Alliance. He is the son of Varian. You know that whole thing about Garrosh not wanting women and children to be killed? He just crushed the Alliance prince with a giant bell. Yeah, that's Garrosh for you.
The Warchief's rage crushes the bell and nearly every bone in Anduin's body, but he doesn't kill him. The prince is going to spend some time recovering, while the Alliance and the Horde, they deal with the threat of the Thunder King and realize that working together is way better than constantly trying to kill each other. Vol'jin, now healed up and a bit wiser, also makes his return, kicking off the Darkspear Rebellion. The time without their leader, it hasn't exactly been great for the Darkspear trolls. even Goel can see that the time to clean up his mistakes has come. Together with Sourfang, who had promised to kill Garrosh if he led the Horde down a dark path, they went on ahead inside of Orgrimmar with the aid of Nazgrim. But Garrosh, he's been quite busy during his time as warchief, and perhaps it's already too late.
This is a really cool cinematic, and you guys should actually see the whole one, not the little cut down version, because it is a beautiful one. Yeah, they're dealing with Shah, which is the different forces in, I don't know if it's called mythology or whatnot, but the Shahs are basically, you've got a shadow evil one, which is the equivalent of, you know, evil and demons in Judeo-Christian law. So think of a big evil Shah as kind of like a devil demon. That's kind of all you need to know. It's bad. It's very bad.
Thirsts. Bring it to the pools.
For context, this pool is a very pure source of life and water. The entire Veil of Blossoms it's the Golden Veil. It's being kept alive by the purity of these pools. And he wants to put whatever he just dug out of the ground into the holiest fountain on the land. That's Garrosh for you. He's desecrating the land, killing Pandaren, and, you know, invading it. Whoops!
Run rampant for far too long, Hellscream. But that stops now.
Step aside, Pandaren. You confront a force beyond reckoning.
Your father dabbled in powers beyond reckoning. Where is he now? Beside the Tauren, trolls, and others. You are nothing like them!
They are no longer part of my horde!
The world will hear of this. They will come for you.
Yes, I'm counting on it. The armies of the world will come for me. And within my fortress, they will face all the terrible creatures I have wrought. The boundless power I have mastered. And one by one, they will fall at my feet. Anyone who would rise against my new horde will be impaled upon the spires of Orgrimmar! You Pandaren tried to bury your hate and your anger, but such power cannot be contained. It must be unleashed!
A time will come when you will answer for your crimes.
I answer to no one!
Challenge me will burn in the fires of my hatred.
Garrosh, ladies and gentlemen, he takes the heart of the Shadow Shah and puts it in the pool, effectively giving it life once more and corrupting the pool, which is what's in the heart of everyone. That's the way they sort of explain it is inside all of us we have everything. We have happiness, we have love, we have doubt, we have greed, which is, if you want to think of it as the Catholic 7 sins, and each of these has its own Shah. This one being the collection of everything that is evil, everything, all the fear, all the hate, all the malice, and he's basically brought it back.
And within my forge will be impaled upon the spires of Orgrimmar!
Sounds like something Hitler would say.
Yashiraj.
All who challenge me will burn in the fires of my hatred.
Deep beneath the land of Pandaria, they have found the heart of the old god Yashiraj, buried there millennia ago. Impounding it in the pool causes a massive explosion, massive devastation to the land of Pandaria. Alliance and Horde, they work together during this so-called Siege of Orgrimmar, realizing that their warchief has to be kicked out. Our raid started beneath the veil against Immersius and the Fallen Protectors. It then moved on, proving and cleansing ourselves for Nuroshen, Guardian of the Vault, where they had found the heart. After the Shah Pride fights, a Shah released by Garrosh, we discover just how far the warchief has stepped away from the orc we knew in the past.
Look here! He left his weapon behind.
Gore howl.
This means he's completely unhinged.
News to no one, Regent Lord.
Gorhal, the blade of his father's father, replaced with Zalato, desecrated image of Gorhal. This weapon, it whispers to its wielder, which might make you wonder if by this point Garrosh was actually under the control of the old gods. But again, they have stated that he was not. Good or bad, at least his choices were his own. Choices that made some step away from him, while others they remained ever loyal, like Zayla riding atop Galagras, the last blood of Galakrons. It's the proto-drake that we defeat, while Zayla survives the encounter to fight another day. Atop the walls of Orgrimmar, General Hellscream remains ever loyal to his warchief, but the gates can't hold against the Night Elf onslaughts. With the gates fallen, we find out exactly how far Garrosh and his horde have taken this. There are Theramore citizens, presumably those evacuated before the bombing. They're found caged or used for target practice or forced to fight each other for the sake of their children.
I can't. They took my children. I'm so sorry. Please, find my babies.
Trolls are also hung up, tormented and used for target practice. At the auction house, goblins are forced to dance for the orcs' entertainment. G. Firepaw has been beaten nearly unconscious as they're trying to get information out of him on the gathered Pandaran artifacts. Even Gammon, who heroically held his ground against the Gorkron, he's been tied up.
I, Gammon, will save us.
After taking out the Dark Shamans Harum and Cardris, we join Gammon downstairs to confront Hellscream. Despite loyal orcs like Etric and Sourfang deciding to step away from Garrosh, Hellscream will not, cannot let go of his duties to the warchief. Fiercely loyal to the hordes and bound by a rigorous code of honor and duty, Hellscream will hold the line for his warchief until his dying breath.
I die with honor. Look, God. Oh, God.
a more recent, but nonetheless fiercely loyal orc. That is Melkorok. When the warchief needed a volunteer to infuse with the power of Y'Shaarj, it was only natural that Melkorok would offer without hesitation. Already a force to reckon with before the infusion, he is now a massive hulking force. Beyond him, there are the spoils of Pandaria. Artifacts, weapons and treasures found in the land. Tuck the Bloodthirsty from the Isle of Giants. Siegecrafter Helix Blackfuse, the only goblin to satisfy Garrosh in his search for the engineer of the true hordes, creating monstrous, deadly weaponry like the Iron Star. Then the Paragons of the Kluxi, the mented bug-like race ever loyal to their old god Y'Shaarj, until all were conquered and overcome, and only warchief Garrosh Hellscream remained.
It is not too late, Garrosh. Lay down the mantle of warchief. We can end this here, now, with no more bloodshed. Ha! Do you remember nothing of honor, of glory on a battlefield? You who would parley with the humans, who allowed warlocks to practice their dark magics right under our feet. You are weak. We are the Orcish Horde, the true Horde. We die, bloody and thrashing on the field of battle, like true orcs should. You are an orc no longer, and speak for none but yourself. You betrayed our people to forge your fragile alliances, and I will take great pleasure in tearing them apart. Then you have forced my hand. I will correct the mistake I made long ago. Spirits of the wind, the earth, the water, hear my call! Come to my aid! Fool! My dark shaman have twisted and tortured the elements for miles around. They cannot hear you now. Once again, you prove too weak and powerless to do anything. Never powerless, Garrosh, and never alone. So, you wish to face off against a real orc warchief. So be it. I, Garrosh, son of Grom, will show you what it means to be called Hellscream. Anger, hatred, fear, they are weapons of war. The tools of a warchief. Yes, I can see it now. I can see the future of this world. A world ruled by the Horde. My Horde. The heart will be your end.
While the heart of Y'Shaarj hangs above the inner chamber, occasionally empowering Garrosh further and sucking us in, his Korkron and Iron Stars, they race across the battlefield, coming to the aid of the warchief.
You can never leave this place. There is no way home. The true Horde will come to pass. I have seen it. It has shown me. I have seen mountains of skulls and rivers of blood, and I will have my world!
More and more of Y'Shaarj's power is flooded into Garrosh, until it's time for him to show us a glorious destiny, the thing that he wishes for the most.
You think you have won? You are blind! I will force your eyes open! Behold! My glorious destiny!
And while he fought very hard to bring that dream of his horde to life, the world, the other factions amongst the hordes, they disagreed. Disagreed with his vision and his methods. Garrosh is kicked out of the mantle of warchief, while the heart of Yashiraj is completely drained.
No! This world is my destiny. My destiny.
You disappoint me, Garrosh. You are not worthy of your father's legacy.
His punishment is not for you alone to decide.
I won't let you take him.
Really cool thing about this is, depending on which faction you play, you get a different version of the cinematic. We can watch the Alliance one first, and you'll see the Alliance point of view of this, and then we get to see the Horde point of view. And it gives you a full picture of the story of what's going on. So a little bit of a 10-second rewatch, but both sides are actually very interesting when you see the full context.
You disappoint me, Garrosh. You are not worthy of your father's legacy.
His punishment is not for you alone to decide.
I won't let you take him.
We have all suffered from his atrocities. My people, more than any other. Let him stand trial in Pandaria. There, we will mete out justice for all.
Look at them. Already they plot against us. Seize this moment, Varian. Dismantle the Horde.
Guardsmen!
Father, what are you doing?
What a king must do.
I will speak to your warchief.
And this is a very interesting thing. This is where the differences happen. Now let's open up the Horde version and start from that point onwards where the Alliance was speaking. Now you get to see what the Horde is actually talking about. So interesting. Assumptions are very dangerous.
The Horde needs its true warchief. Now, more than ever.
Yes, but it was you that held the Horde together during this madness. It was you that protected our honor. From this day forward, Vol'jin, if you lead, I will follow.
I am not worthy. But I will give my all for the Horde.
So you've got the Horde changing leadership and banding together, whereas the Alliance think they're plotting. Assumptions are very dangerous. Though Jaina does have a very good reason for being angry, her home city did just get bombed.
I will speak to your warchief. I speak for the Horde.
Very well. The Horde has committed heinous crimes, Vol'jin. But some among you fought against Garrosh's tyranny. For that, I am willing to end this bloodshed. But know this. If your Horde fails to uphold honor as Garrosh did, we will end you.
and that becomes pretty much the ending for this expansion. Now let's go a little bit further, and that's where War Crimes, the book, kicks off.
Goel would not have someone else take the killing blow, so rather than just killing our enemy on the spot, a trial it shall be. I've done a much more detailed video on the novel War Crimes if you're interested in the details of the trial. In essence, they held this trial in Pandaria with Taranzu as judge and the August Celestials to pass judgments. Duran the Whisperwind was appointed as the accuser, and none other than Bane Bloodhoof tried to defend Garrosh. Now the book, it was more about recapping past events and pushing the story forward into the next expansion. We did see Sylvanas and Verisa, the Windrunner sisters, planning to poison Garrosh. Verisa, very keen on taking vengeance for her husband Ronin's death, but in between she had a change of heart, informed Anduin that the food was poisoned, and the prince prevented his death. Tyrande and Bane, they spent the trial showing moments of the past, moments connected to Garrosh like the bombing of Theramore. But again, the trial itself, it didn't matter much, as the August Celestials, they would have chosen for imprisonment anyways. Only where there is life, can there be change. Which the book, it oddly enough makes you believe could be a possibility, that there could be hope for Garrosh, that this might not be the end of his story. The former warchief had quite a few conversations with Anduin about their nature, who they are, what choices they've made along the way. While reading this, I was really hoping that Garrosh could go through more character growth, and in an interview, Christy Golden actually mentions that had Kairos not approached him with their schemes, we might have seen a different Garrosh. Of course, there's also the behind-the-scenes bits of different teams working on his story, having different visions for the character, a different end destination. All that said though, change would not be his fate. At the end of the trial, Garrosh is given a chance to speak. He says, and Prince Anduin Rin, who by all rights should be foremost amongst those clamoring for my death, has chosen to spend hours in my company. I attempted to slay him in a brutal, cruel and painful manner. And what does he do? Garrosh shook his head, as if in disbelief. He speaks to me of the light. He tells me he believes that I can change. He has shown me kindness when I offered hatred and violence. It is because of him that I stand before you, facing what I expect to be a pronouncement of my death as a warrior, not as a broken slave. He lifted his shackled hands and gave Anduin a slight bow before turning to face the crowd once more. Oh yes, I know full well how much blood is on my hands. I know exactly the magnitude and the consequences of what I have done. He took a deep breath and seemed to be gathering his thoughts. Anduin leaned forwards, not wanting to hope, but hoping wildly, beautifully anyway. And now, here at this moment, when I am free to speak my mind and heart, I tell you true. I regret. Nothing. Anduin forgot to breathe. He felt cold, numb. He sat staring at Garrosh, for a moment unable to mentally process the words. Sound hammered on his ears, the outraged cries of a furious public. Taranzu struck the gong furiously, calling for order, but Garrosh, it seemed, had only begun. He lifted his shackled arms and bellowed. Yes, I would destroy 1,000 Theramores if it would bring the Alliance to its knees. I would hunt down every night elf whelp that bleats on the face of this world and silence their mewling forever. I would banish every troll, every tauren, every simpering blood elf and greedy goblin and shambling walking corpse if it were within my power, and it almost was. Garrosh continued. Anduin clenched his jaw. How could he have believed Garrosh could change? The only atrocities I regret are the ones I did not perform, the orc shouted, grinning ferociously at the turmoil his words had caused. The only thing that preys on me is that I was stopped before I could see the true Horde live again. And with that speech, the plan behind the scenes was put in motion. As Zayla, Shokia, Talon Songweaver, Harrow Miser, and the Infinite Dragonflight assaulted the temple where the court was being held, the Bronze Dragon Kairos Dormu, working together with the Black Dragon Rephion, they used the device that we helped power up the Vision of Time, to set Garrosh free and take him back in time to an alternate reality. This with the intent of Garrosh forming a new horde and have that horde stand with Azeroth against the coming Legion.
You are warchief no longer, Hellscream. You're free because I willed it. You live because I will it. You will join your father and rally the old Orc clans because I will it.
An alternate reality set before the time that the Orcs drank the demonic blood, specifically selected to be one where Garrosh had not been born. Grommash's wife Golka, she had died during an ogre raid here before they were able to have kids, which is also what happened to Garrosh's mother, but not before she gave birth to him. But what the Bronze had not counted on was that Garrosh had other plans in mind. His future for his horde is not under the control of some sort of bronze dragon, so he picks up a shard from the Vision of Time and murders Kairos. With his partner in crime defeated, Garrosh faces a near impossible task. The task of convincing this alternate version of his father and the Warsong clan of the future that he knows. He jumps into a pit where the Warsong clan has their Makrogan, not Makora, but Makrogan, a way for the Warsong to prove their worth. It's not necessarily a duel to the death, it is more a duel of will, although sometimes accidents do happen. Garrosh, still chained up and a pure outsider to the Warsong clan, he tries to convince Grommash to listen to him without telling who he actually is. Garrosh Hellscream, I have traveled far and sacrificed much to stand in front of you. I am here to defy what fate has dictated for you and all orcs. Slavery, the lust of our souls, and everything that makes us great. At first, Grommash laughs at his face and declares him to be a lunatic. But Garrosh has to convince Grum. He explains to the chieftain that the path of Warsong slavery will not come from war or defeat. Your fate will be accepted freely and gladly, he said, raising his voice. And it will be you, Garrosh Hellscream, who will insist on being the first to tie yourself to the orcs' new masters. The rest will follow. We will never recover. Now Garrosh had insulted Grum's honor, and Warsong mercy only goes so far. The 4 guards that were holding him are told to duel Garrosh, and he manages to win, chains and all. This gives him the chance to talk to Grommash and explain more about his motivations. He shows him the shard taken from Kairos, and guesses that the elements at the Stones of Prophecy, the same place where Thrall had told him the full truth about his father, that there they will be able to show Grommash the future. They travel to the location. And on the way, Garrosh explains more about his plans of conquest. His plans with these orcs. Bringing together the clans is not going to be easy, but the spoils of war will convince them. Once they reach the stones, the elder Zanuck already knows that they're coming. The elements have been rising up since they can feel that Garrosh does not belong here. The elder treats Grommash with respect, but gives Garrosh nothing but venom. He goes as far as to deny Garrosh access to the stones. Garrosh doesn't mind, as long as Grommash is allowed entry. The stranger believes the fate of this world rests upon my choices, Grommash said, lifting the glass while standing inside the stone circle. He also claims the proof lies within this. Prove him wrong and he will die here. Show me the truth, one way or the other. The elements respond, and Grommash is picked up by a great swirl of air. Inside, he sees the truth of Garrosh's words. He sees how the Horde is formed, how they slowly turn green, how the powers of the Warlocks are embraced, and how Gul'dan offers them the demon blood. He sees how the events took place in our time, and how he himself steps up to be the first to drink. Grommash was told by Garrosh that he did this not because he was weak, but because he would not let any other orc take such a risk first. And this was a lie. Although perhaps a lie Garrosh told himself to make his father look better, but a lie nonetheless. The truth is that Grommash wanted to be the first, because none would be stronger than him, not for a moment. He would never be weak. The visions continued as Grommash saw his future unfold. But in the meantime, the Elder saw the same visions as Grommash. He was terrified to realize the future. And at first, Garrosh was being very kind to the old orc, but then the orc realized what their future could become. Peace. They might see peace. You see, the visions did not stop with just the bad part of the Horde. They continued showing Thrall and the new Horde he tried to build. Hellscream can bear it. He can overcome it. The corruption will not be the end. Tears streamed down Zanak's face, his voice laced with joy and hope. One world in ruins, but the other stronger than ever. Hellscream's sacrifice saves us all. You've seen it. Garrosh had seen this future before, and does not like it. Thrall's vision of the Horde, one trying to aim at peace with the Alliance, it's the precise thing that Garrosh had turned his back on when he became warchief, and he does not want that future to happen. He wants this Horde to become conquerors and take Azeroth for him. So, he places his hand over the old orc's mouth and nose, and slowly suffocates the life out of him. Now Zanak won't be able to influence Grommash. Garrosh then quickly makes his way to his father, tells the guards to pull him out of there, to end the vision before Grommash knows too much, before he finds out about Thrall and the rest of the story. He lies to him about the elder shaman being killed by the vision, fearing that the same could have happened to Grommash. With only half the story in his mind, Grommash agrees to Garrosh's plans of invading Azeroth. It's not going to be easy, and they only have a few months, but they will have to convince the rest of them to not touch Gul'dan's so-called gifts.
Drink, Hellscream. Claim your destiny. You will all be conquerors. And what, Gul'dan, must we give in return? Everything. You would reject this gift. And did you bring these mongrels here just to watch you die? This was not our destiny. Times change. We will never be slaves! But we will be conquerors.
This cinematic, it's still amazing, with the parallels of Grommash caught in the explosion. Only this time Garrosh is there to push him out of it. This was not their destiny. This is a different horde. This is the Iron Horde, gathering the clans and receiving quite a few technological upgrades from the visiting Garrosh. Grommash would be the warchief of the Iron Horde, while Garrosh he became the leader of the Warsong clan. The Dark Portal turned red, trying to accomplish Garrosh's goal of conquest, but Azeroth it had grown pretty strong over the years. The initial assault it quickly pushed back, and they decide to step through the Dark Portal, back in time to this alternate reality.
Storm the portal!
Step by step, the Iron Horde is dismantled, but to keep it focused on Garrosh, our escapee was found in a grant where he nearly ended our lives. Thankfully, there was Goel to steal the kill. Confront the mistakes of his past and challenge Garrosh to Makura.
Now, you die. Garrosh! Thrall! You're too late, old friend. No more, Garrosh. Just you and me. I challenge you to Makura! Thrall. No. Very well, Shaman. We finish this alone, where it all began, at the Stones of Prophecy. Must answer for your crimes, Garrosh. All I did it for the Horde! You failed the Horde! You made me warchief! You left me to pick up your pieces! You failed me! Never had the strength of a true warrior. I do not rely on strength alone, Garrosh. My power is all around you. What I am. No. You chose your own destiny.
While I might have wished for a bit more character growth when it comes to Garrosh, rather than just use him to kick off the next expansion and then just kill him off. The raw emotion, the dialogue and the cutscene that sends him on his way, it is rather awesome. There are those out there that would say that Garrosh did nothing wrong, while others believe that he is evil incarnate. I personally think that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, mirrored here by the final conversation. He went from an orc growing up in the shadow and knowledge of his father's worst deeds, not having a shred of faith in his own abilities, until there was Thrall, who showed up and completed the story. A successful campaign in Northrend led to Garrosh taking over control of the Horde, despite voices like Cairne, like Garrosh himself telling Thrall that he wasn't ready for this, but Thrall he had made up his mind, believing that the advisors that would surround Garrosh, that they would guide him in the right direction. A mistake, he would later realize. Their different visions clashing with the new warchief, even going as far as threatening his life. It caused him to replace them, surround himself with those that already agreed with his vision. Therein lies one of the major differences between the paths of Varian and Garrosh, or once they were similar. Varian, he listened to those around him, those that advised him. He kept an open heart, while the ones that were supposed to challenge Garrosh's ideas, they either abandoned him or they were kicked out. That's what I mean with the truth lies somewhere in the middle. It's not just Garrosh's fault, but to say that he didn't do anything wrong is a bit of a stretch, in my opinion. That is of course very debatable, and another thing that is still being discussed to this day is the question, did Thrall cheat during the Mak'gora? My opinion is that Garrosh knew full well who he had challenged, that there's no set rulebook or referee for Mak'gora, that if Thrall had cheated by the old rules, then so did Garrosh. And at the end of the day, I don't think that's the point. It was closure, a circle of storytelling for these two connected characters. While Goel's choice here, cleaning up his mess, realizing that there is some truth to Garrosh's words, bravely saying that you chose your own destiny is only half the truth, and that emotional inner turmoil, it eventually caused him to give up the Doomhammer and pass it on to a shaman hero in their battle against the Legion. In the case of alternate Draenor, Grommash and the Iron Horde, they would be defeated. Gul'dan and his Fell Horde, they would be defeated. The Burning Legion, they would be defeated, as we left this alternate reality behind to do its thing. Later on, the Horde would reconnect to this reality, now with the timelines synced up, meaning that around 35 years has passed on alternate Draenor. Grommash actually had a son in that time, but Exarch Hellscream, he is thrown in his fate with Yrl and the Draenei. A war is going on between the Magyar Orcs and the Holy Draenei. During the recruitment scenario, we sadly didn't see this alternate child of Grommash, only his sacrifice. So perhaps in the future, if they do decide to return to the storyline, we'll dive deeper into what's happening on alternate Draenor. We might find out more about this alternate Hellscream. In the case of our Garrosh, he's been deemed as one of the worst possible incarnations of himself by the Bronze Dragons. In countless potential timelines, he was seen as a great hero to his people. Some called him the Horde's greatest warchief. And despite judging our Garrosh like that, even now, people still see him as a hero. Not a thrall as a warchief. Not one to beg and crawl for peace, but one willing and able to claim what the Horde needed, by any means necessary.
I am the warchief of the Horde! Respect my authority!
Hate him or love him, he is definitely one of the better characters that was built up within World of Warcraft. And with that, I think it's about time to wrap up this video. It's been a while since we did such a deep dive into a character, but man oh man, has it been fun. I really hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. Question for the comments though, do you believe the Thrall cheated during the Mak'gora? Let's see what arguments we can come up with. And as always, thank you very much for watching everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time, see ya!
The reason why they ask if he cheats, after the Mak'gora, Thrall is unable to use the elements. So he's a shaman, which means all of his power is coming from the elements themselves, earth, fire, water, and air. And he's unable to call them. They simply refuse to speak to him. And his hammer, Doomhammer, is simply nothing more than a hammer now. It won't obey him. So after that, he just sort of... he kind of goes on a journey of trying to figure out who is he, what is he doing, what did he do wrong, you know, is he to blame for all of this? So it's been a discussion as to whether or not he cheated for a while. Traditionally, the rules of Mak'gora were supposed to be, you bring a single weapon, you don't wear armor. And some people have said that maybe a third rule was that you don't use sort of magic, which is pretty much what Thrall used, being a shaman. But then again, it's not so clearly defined. So it's a little bit up in the air and up for interpretation. So it's up to people to decide what they feel. But a great part about Garrosh's story is that it opens up the entire Iron Horde in Old Draenor. And they are by no means to be underestimated. They all have their story arcs, and I've even sort of put videos on the side if at a later date you guys are interested. One of them tells the story of Grommash and the other warlords, and they are by all accounts tough as nails. But one of them is Gul'dan. Another one is Ner'zhul, who ultimately becomes the Lich King. But Gul'dan is a big one because he does influence the original timeline very much. Because after his death, well, one, he was leading the Horde when they opened up the first Dark Portal. Well, second Dark, well, sort of first Dark Portal. 2, his skull after his death was used to open up the Dark Portal the second time. And then after that, his skull was actually used to empower Illidan. So that ties into Illidan's story. So Gul'dan is a very big central player, a very interesting story to look at. And it does tie into the later expansions, being Legion, being when the Legion itself attacks Azeroth, thanks to one of the biggest servants, Gul'dan. So by tapping into the past and opening that gateway, the timeline doesn't play out how it did in the original storyline where Gul'dan ends up dying. He actually is in a different timeline. He gets a little bit of knowledge of what's going on. He manages to sidestep his death. And so the Legion comes knocking, which on its own is an awesome story because it ties into a lot of other characters. Varian gets a big role. Sylvanas gets a big role. Gul'dan has a role, obviously. And Illidan becomes one of the central characters of that expansion, which makes it an awesome expansion. And again, the cinematics are even better than this expansion. The fight scenes are even better. The music gets better. The storytelling gets better. And it just expands further and further. And it's an awesome watch. So I'm hoping that you guys are actually interested in that, because the following weeks are going to be Gul'dan, Illidan, and possibly also Varian, who is another awesome character, being the king of the Alliance and Stormwind, and father to Anduin, who later on obviously gets more screen time because he grows up, and being the young prince, he's sort of a redemption arc for Arthas, who was the fallen prince. So the story just gets, it's sort of like a snake chasing its own tail in that it echoes and it rhymes, but it's a great story nevertheless. And Garrosh's arc was one of the better ones, but again, it does that whole full loop, and it sort of ends close to where it began. And the discussion of did Garrosh actually do anything wrong, it does come up. A big April Fool's joke is putting videos and discussions of did Garrosh do anything wrong. And before he was made Warchief, his first thing was, I don't want to be Warchief. I shouldn't be Warchief. You know, I'm a great commander, I'm a great wartime leader, but I'm not a diplomat. And the question comes down to whether or not Thrall made the right decision, because everyone, including all the advisors, didn't feel that Garrosh should be the war chief. He wasn't experienced enough, he wasn't old enough, he wasn't diplomatic. He was great on the war front, but not so much as a leader of an entire faction. But Thrall felt that he was ready, and given the political climate after Wrath of the Lich King, you had Cao Fang's son, who died in Wrath of the Lich King, fighting alongside the Alliance at the Wrathgate. He was seen as one of the potential future leaders of the Horde, but he ended up dying. So they looked at the next young orc that was looked up to by all the young orcs in that war, being Garrosh. But he was a lot more hot-headed, while Cao Fang's son was happy to fight alongside the Alliance. Garrosh did not want to fight alongside them. He wanted to get rid of them. So there were very different points of view. And even with Cao Fang trying to give a little bit of guidance and wisdom to Garrosh, Garrosh only took away what he wanted. He took away the talk of no matter how dire the battle, never forsake honor, but he didn't take the wisdom of maybe you shouldn't be killing everyone, which is unfortunate because that would have been the much more important lesson. But again, that's how the story played out, and that's how it ended. Did you guys enjoy it? What do you think of Garrosh as a character? I personally like him. He's a great character, and he was a great way to not only excel the storyline, but sort of open up new possibilities. And it was very interesting to see change of leadership in the Horde. For 2-3 expansions, and of course Warcraft 3, it was always Thrall. And having Garrosh, have someone else take that mantle, added a lot of flavor. But over time, we got to see him become more and more extreme. And then people that were big fans of Garrosh slowly started going, hang on a minute. I don't want to associate myself with someone that's resembling Hitler more and more every day. But now at this point, Vol'jin becomes leader of the Horde, so he's a new war chief. And Vol'jin's a really cool character too. He has his own story arc, which is really great. He was one of the first allies that Thrall made in Kalimdor, and he helped forge the Horde alongside Thrall in Warcraft 3. Really cool story. You enjoyed it? That's good to hear. That's good to hear. But yeah, I hope you're looking forward to the story of Gul'dan. I will try to plug a little bit of flavor as to the Iron Horde warlords, because some of their stories are just amazing. They do this really cool format where they tell the story not in a cinematic, they sort of animate. I don't know what you call this, but it's sort of animated drawings. But it retains all the atmosphere, the music, the sounds. It's really cool. And some of these characters, it just really gives the weight of who you're really dealing with and the types of people that Garrosh was trying to recruit and bring together in his new horde. But it also comes into play, why did they want him to do this? And it was kind of to fight the Legion, because the Legion was going to invade the planet anyway, and they sort of needed someone to stand up to them. And the idea was to grab the old Iron Horde and use them to fight off the Legion. So, you know, there's always a bigger fish. There's always a bigger fish. But by doing that, they accelerated and allowed Gul'dan to summon them. So that's going to be a cool story. All right, guys. I hope you had fun. I had a blast. Let's wrap it up here. We'll continue off next week. But don't forget, tomorrow we're playing Persona 5 Royale. Sunday, we're playing a new game. I think that Metal Gear Rising has won the vote. So we will probably be playing Rising, Revengeance, which I've never played before, so I'm actually going to be blind to that one. But it seems to be action, it seems to be hack and slash, there seems to be music, so it'll be enjoyable. If you're an MGS or DMC fan, or even Nier Automata, that should be totally up your alley. And then Monday we will be playing Ghost of Tsushima. I believe it will be the finale. And after that, moving forward, Monday will become Anime Monday, where we play some Fire Emblem Three Houses and do some anime reactions. So it's going to be jam-packed. I can't believe it's the weekend again. It's the best time of the week for me. 4 days of live streaming. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to see you at tomorrow's live stream, and I'm going to be in the Discord as always during the week. So I hope to see you there. The links are all in the bio and the description, so just click them. Hop onto the Discord. Hop onto the reaction channel for shits and giggles, and I hope to see you at the live stream. Till then, Ninja Kuma out. Bye.
Play.